okay? Have you got a good, you can hear us okay in the room?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. So should we get started or are we waiting for other people? What's your sense?
I feel like we might be waiting for a couple, but I think that given our 5 cutoff, that we should get started, and if they do miss anything, this will be good.
Okay, great. So tonight is our grand finale, and so based on the previous 2 sessions, Anna and I conferred earlier this week, and the sense that we had was that the session last week where you were looking at actual applications was the most helpful because it wasn't so abstract as my presentation the first week. So Anna was kind enough to spend time going through successful ArchSpark applications. And so we pulled a few of them, and one that we didn't think was as successful to go through those to give you a sense of, what a successful application might look like. And they're in different disciplines. We've got a finite amount of time and a lot of material we'd like to get through. We may not get through it all. But the hope is that, you can weigh in and give us, your response as if you were on the panel. Would these be projects you would fund? And what are the strengths and weaknesses? And then 2 of the participants have shared their applications, their drafts, and maybe we can leave 15 minutes at the end to look at those. Or Anna, do you think we should start with those? Do you have a preference?
I think maybe we should go with the examples we have, because I feel like we can apply what we learn from those examples on real proposals.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Can you share?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Let me just cross.
Great.
You can see that?
It says it's loading,
Mm-hmm.
but I can look at it offline. Can everybody in the room see it?
Yes. Yeah. But what about our two?
Well, I have the link you sent me, so it still says loading on mine. So let me just go to the link because I have it open and it's the same thing.
What about Julian and Raven? Can you see what I have or no?
It's a loading screen, right?
Oh, it's a loading screen as well. Okay. Let me see if I can fix it.
The other thing, Anna, maybe if you want to make me a co-host, I could share my screen.
I did make you a co-host, so see if that. I'm gonna stop sharing and hold on. Yeah, maybe see if it works for you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the people at home?
I can see it, yeah.
Great. Okay, then let's go with this.
That's a, yeah, do you mind making it full screen? Maybe it'll be easier for us to see.
Sure. Yes, let me slideshow. Nope. Okay, view.
Just on the right, up on the top. Oh yeah.
Oh no, okay, so that's what you did, and now it says loading. Just on the right. Let's
Maybe
see.
we can just enlarge it with the magnifying glass. Maybe that'll be enough.
Okay, let me try that. Okay, that doesn't seem to be right. Format background.
Did you make it a slideshow?
Yeah, that's the thing, that's why it wasn't working before.
Oh,
View. Okay, let's not do that. Okay, that is not right. And this is now too big for the screen, right? Just trying to look for,
Can you remove the pages or make the pages smaller on the side? No.
okay, let me see, full
That's why
screen.
it's
Wait a
bigger.
second, wait. I think I may have found it. Full screen. Okay, that's saying that's full screen. Okay. I see what you're saying. You're saying to make this smaller, but it doesn't allow me to do that. Okay, so let me do this
Put it in.
So-
That's a little better.
a little better. Okay. Sorry, I don't think we had anticipated a formatting problem. Okay, so if everybody wants to spend 1 minute reading this, then we can discuss. We're only using 2 sections of this application, but with the other 3 that we have the full, all the text sections.
For those in the room who can't read that, I'm just gonna read it aloud.
Okay.
So artist statement, while I do not necessarily think of myself as an artist, I am a creator. I value the human experience in all its forms, especially in the form of verbal communication. I believe laughter is a true healer, so I work towards lightening the weight of the world with my words, even if just for a short moment. The artistic value I bring to my work lies in the authentic and raw perspective I choose to frame that which I communicate. This requires vulnerability, instinctiveness, and above all mindfulness. I recognize that my way with words is a gift, a talent. As a creator, I want to create space for conversation, authentic interaction between myself and others. I want those interactions to elicit a lasting emotional response, one in which community can be strengthened and built. And then to pay it forward, which is the community outreach aspect of Art Spark, this person wrote season 1 of the second act. So just so you know, this was a podcast series. So season 1 of the second act, which is what it's called, will wrap up with a themed outreach event in October, in which guests will be encouraged to dress up as their childhood dream, asking the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Content from the season and wrap party will be used to later develop a workshop to cultivate conversations amongst members of the working community in a casual manner, similar to the podcast. Workshops will be offered to businesses and area schools and scheduled upon request.
Great, thanks for that. So the project is a podcast about people who are exploring second careers. And what I liked about this artist statement was that I thought that the way I had a sense of the person who was going to be making this project, that she talks about being authentic and a raw perspective, that she doesn't necessarily think of herself as an artist, but she values the human experience, and that she has a gift with words, so that doing something that is focused around a podcast, which is using language and words and conversation, it all, for me, this gave me a sense of who the person is behind the art and what they bring, what their values are, why they're choosing this particular medium and discipline for their artwork. And then in terms of the pay it forward, I liked that she then had this idea for a public event, right, where people would be allowed to sort of have this fantasy of playing out what they always had hoped to be when they were a child, before they were burdened with the responsibilities of adulthood, or perhaps, not pursuing their dreams. And I just thought it was very imaginative. I could imagine a lot of people, wanting to participate. It just had a fun spirit. And it was then linked to the project that she's doing thematically, and that it would then also getting people to start talking. So I'm just curious, for people in the room, people online, did this, in reading this, and I realize you're at a disadvantage for not having read the full project description. Does this sound like something you could imagine existing? Did the artist's statement make you think this was the right person to do this project? I'm just curious for anyone's reactions to this example.
I thought that the second half, the pay it forward part, sounded like a lot of fun. Anything where I get to dress up as a character, you know, I thought, oh, that would be fun. I've done that workshop.
Yeah, I agree, right? It sounded like something you could imagine, like, oh yeah, I would like to do that.
And
And
it's
it
very,
made me, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, it's very related to the original project as well, so. It really makes that connection. It's in the same vein, but it's an additional, like it could even be used as a marketing tool to, encourage more listeners and that type of thing.
Good point, right? That's a great publicity, right? Something that would make the project more visible in the community, you're right. And a way to promote the project. Yeah, I agree. I liked that the idea of the pay it forward really integrated the idea of the project itself, and that it also had like a low barrier for entry. It made it something that was accessible and not that you had to be an artist to participate. It had a real community spirit to my mind.
I did have like a problem though with the way she opened her artist statement. Because this is a grant for artists.
Right.
And she's like saying, I'm not an artist, but she is. And like, I think she needs to have a little bit more belief in herself as well.
I think my issue with the artist statement is, like, aside from I'm really great at this, what qualifications are there?
Well, that's usually in the bio. So bio would be the one that would detail her qualifications.
But last week, didn't, like, Rachel was going, well, I'm going to include a few things that let you know that I have done this and I do this well,
I mean, even if it's just like, okay, here's what my art is like, and I can't read it very well from here, but like, I don't remember there being much that was like specifically delineating what makes their art or their work stand out from other, like, what is it about that, your ability that is remarkable, other than, are we just supposed to glean that from the type of writing that we're looking at?
I think that because you don't have the full application, what the artist was talking about is that she had an experience, and I think she was saying that I read it as that she was trying to make art accessible and not like you had to have a title to make art, that anybody could do it. And so she was taking from her life experience and turning it into art, is how I read it, that she had a second career and therefore from that had this idea that she wanted other people to be able to explore their fantasies or whether they were pursuing a new career. And so she was then trying to open it up to other people. So I think in the project description, I at least had a sense, and I'm sorry, I now regret that I didn't suggest to Anna that we include all of the sections. So maybe why don't we, since the next example has all of the sections, why don't we go on to that? And then we'll have a better, like a 360, right? We'll be able to see everything that was put into the application and maybe have a better sense of how the applicant organized it. But if you remember, in response to the point about putting something in the artist statement about her credentials, like my view of things like that is that you have certain assets that you want to highlight, that you want to draw attention to for your prospective funder. And so it's up to you where in the application that information best serves you. And so this person could have said, you know, already, I've already have an audience of, you know, 500 people or something in their artist statement that, you know, she talks about creating a space for conversations and authentic interactions between herself and others. She could have given an example. She could have said, for example, I've done this that has, you know, shown that I can bring people together. That might have been a good way to reinforce the point that she's trying to make while also showing a credential, right? That I've done this before. Like, trust me, I have the skills it will take to do that.
And I think I'm used to seeing artist statements being longer than that as well. So there's definitely room to like expand on what she has written in this area. So she might have, you know, it might have been within her interest to like use all of the characters available to her to like to delve a bit deeper, but
Yeah, I'm guessing that you're right, Anna, that there's it's such a contained amount of space that she may have been limited. Okay, well, let's go on to the second one. Let's see.
I'm gonna try to share again and see if it's
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing then, because I don't think we can both share simultaneously.
Let's see if I can get this to work.
We could also email the presentation to the people who are online. Oh, wait, you may have done it.
Yeah, I keep thinking that, yeah, if you do it as slideshow, there we go.
Can you see it?
It's saying loading again.
Yeah.
It's
That's the problem is that like there's a connection issue, so that's but I'm going to
It does say, can you see at the top, it says view options, Anna?
yeah, I think it's a connection issue, but I'm gonna like make it,
As big as possible.
I'm gonna get it to fit in here, so let me just
Okay. Oh, good.
All right. That's everything? Okay.
Are you ready for the back there?
Great.
Okay. So everyone want to take a moment and just read this? Okay, has everybody had a chance to read that?
Almost to the end.
Okay.
Everyone, you good? All right, Raven, you good? Can I move on to the next page of this?
Great.
Yes,
Okay,
all
great.
good.
So here's the second half of the project description.
So-
Sentence interesting. Yeah.
Lillian and Raven, you both good?
Yes,
Great.
I'm good.
Okay, and now on to the bio.
I just blanked out some of the identifying things. I don't want anyone to feel. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna quickly copy this link and
Sure.
and put it in the chat here and also in Basecamp for everybody, just in case. 'Cause I don't want. I don't want to be able to read it.
Everybody ready to go on to the pay it forward?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is the artist statement first.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Julian, Raven.
Good.
Good. Okay. And so here's the pay it forward.
So has everyone had a chance to read that last, the pay it forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, what are general reactions to the proposal? This, either the individual parts or the sum of the total?
No, it sounds interesting that his statement about bringing more of a physical sense to students who are used to just doing digital work, where you're sort of removed from, you're not clicking a camera or I thought that was interesting, and that,
too.
you know, I felt like there was a lot of repetition of his credentials, how he would use it. That seemed a little unnecessary, but again, I guess he was really, or she, trying to reiterate their credentials.
I thought.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go on.
I think it's got a very linear projection, the way that it's set up to where I think very basically, but this is all true of all grants, where you really have to walk somebody down that line so that they can try to understand really what the project is all about. With something like this, I think we've lost a little bit of these techniques, but it's interesting that a lot of these techniques are coming back, darker techniques that were really at the very beginning of photography, that the artist is using these as an argument to be able to really try to bring these back with really common ways of using chemistry that is available to us. So I thought that that was really successful, but I also would say that I know who the artist is.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I've read their grant before, and this is generally the way that they write their grants, and they're very successful grant writers in the process. But getting back to it, like one of the points to where some of the people in the room were saying, I think that this artist does a really good job of always touching back into the credentials. And maybe it's just because, you know, as artists, we feel like we need to make sure that we are, I think, being understood, and it's a process that not everybody understands how to do. And so you really have to make things visual for people to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, great points. Anyone else? Well, one of the things I liked was that I felt that the artist, I was a little confused at the beginning because it was a professional development workshop. And it did ultimately say it would lead to making a series of prints that would then be in a gallery. But it wasn't initially focused on making art, which I would have thought that most grants would be for somebody to actually make art rather than do a workshop learning a particular technique. But that said, I thought that the artist made a very compelling case that they said that they like to challenge themselves, and that I thought they pulled back the curtain on their interests, that they liked the intersection of technology and art, and that this was something that would be tactile, right? They said they're entering mid-level career and they want to challenge themselves to learn new approaches. And so I had a sense of somebody who was really looking to test themselves creatively and not just sort of stay in a status quo. So I had a positive feeling about this person, and that there really did seem to be a thoughtful sort of step-by-step process, that they're going to start photographing in May. Then they would, as part of this workshop, they'll then produce, right, a set number of pieces between 12 and 15 of these kinds of prints. And then they'll be framed in anticipation of an exhibition that would actually have, you know, a dedicated space. So it felt to me like something that had really had a lot of thought and consideration, and that there really was a game plan. And then at one point, I think in the artist's statement, the artist talked about liking to do work that's explorative and experimental. And I had a sense of what their creative goals were throughout. And at one point they talked about balancing abstraction with detail, like a neon line piercing the sky. And that really, like, I thought that was so good at helping me visualize what they had in mind by giving me some kind, right? We're talking about photography, we're talking about images, and they then gave me an image. At another point, they talked about the terrain as a strata. They conceive of the terrain, they talked about landscapes as a strata of memory. And I thought that was a very vivid image again. So I thought that the balance of giving me a sense of who they were as an artist and what they're trying to do and to challenge themselves, that there was a specific plan, then giving us a lot of credentials. I've done this before. And then saying that I really want to take the learnings that I'm going to get from this grant and from this professional development workshop and make this accessible and incorporate it in my own teaching. So I felt, for me, it checked a lot of boxes. But Anna, you must have reviewed this as the person who gets these grants. What was your sense?
I mean, I thought that this was an extremely strong application. This one didn't get funded, but I have my suspicions about why it didn't get funded, but as somebody who reviews grants, I don't make the decisions on these, but as somebody who reviews grants, I think it checked all of the boxes. It was, there was all of the details. We understand what the project is, we understand what the timeline is, we understand what the deliverables are. From my perspective, this was probably in my top 10. But I think one of, like, particularly for Art Spark, which is, it's not, I think because it's a regional grant, what it was missing was that it doesn't at all speak to Acadiana, and there is no like specification that it needs to speak to Acadiana, but the panelists who generally sit on these panels, it's kind of like this unconscious bias, and they don't even realize it. It doesn't matter how many times I could have brought it up. If that was like the only thing that I could think of why this wouldn't have been higher rated. Not the fact that it was extremely strong year this year and we didn't have that much money to give away. So probably why it didn't rank any higher.
And do you think, Anna, that a project that's proposing to do professional development workshop would qualify as an art project like that?
Well, I mean, so in conjunction with, because she also talks about doing these 12 to 15
Right.
prints.
Yes.
So yes, that is something that is an eligible project. We probably wouldn't accept it as the only part of the grant. So having a grant cover professional development and an outcome from it, then yes, but just professional development, probably not.
Is there a limit to the type of product that this can be used for?
What do you mean?
Like any genre of art, or medium or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we it's a multidisciplinary grant. The only real restriction in arts is culinary arts. It's not a recognized artistic practice in our grants, but we recognize it as ACA, but the state doesn't, and we kind of follow there. You can integrate the culinary arts into a project, but if it's the main focus, the culinary.
Yeah.
Okay, any other observations, thoughts before we move on to the next one? No, we're good. Okay.
I'm gonna try to give it a little bit more.
Well, oh, I think the last sentence is cut. Okay, well done.
Oh, no, now I see it.
You got it all?
Oh, I'm seeing it. Who is not seeing it?
I think we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody has it. Okay, great. ready to move on?
Maybe break in a second, I'll take you still reading.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay, thanks. So this is the bio.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yep. On a statement. All right, a little bit smaller. Are we good online then?
Works for me. Ready?
Raven, you good?
Yes.
Okay, great. And
Yeah, thank you.
pay it forward.
And in case it matters, we don't have access to the Google Slides.
Okay, sure, I'll provide access.
And that would be part of the recording.
In the moment she put it in.
I put it in my scan as well.
Okay.
Has everybody had a chance to read it, the whole thing now?
Yep.
Okay, so we wanted to give you different disciplines so you could see also how people organize information differently. This artist did, the who, what, where, why, and when. So what were people's reactions to this one? Would you fund it? Did you feel it?
I feel like you've got something to say.
Well, I'm not like experienced with it, but reading it, I felt like. Maybe there's like a lot of run-ons or like lots of instances that like. Kind of been split up,
The writing style,
yeah,
It's not as professional.
And is the ultimate goal to make it, to record an album, is that right?
Yes.
And then to like, what, tour that out or promote the album?
I'm not sure.
I guess that it would be better that we're clear what the actual outcome were. Because I mean, if it's to make an album, that sounds super cool, and then, I mean, the part about like playing it for underserved populations, like. I mean, it's sweet to think of Acadiana and the nursing home, that's cute. And there's a lot of like really impressive names in there, but like. It seems like those are just the influences and not like they're participating in this project with, is that right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, A+ for name dropping, but. I mean, like, yeah, these are all like the Cajun heroes, but, I mean, I'd like to hear.
It does say with some collaborations.
Yeah, and I mean, how is this different from any other Cajun or Creole album? Like, what would make this one stand out from what else is being done?
Also say from a practicing graphic designer, a little bit of space between all those headings, a little bit of direction as far as reading in there would help. I think that's something that I stress to all of my students is really imagine yourself as a first-time reader of this. And sometimes just looking at the words and how they're organized on a page can be really confusing to the wrong person sometimes. So really focusing on how you really set up a document, I think is a really important thing as well. I would also say that writing got better towards the end. I think that they got a little bit more structure towards the end of it. So it felt like first part of this felt like more like a draft than it did the last two pieces, but there wasn't a big connection between paying it forward in that very first part, I think, of the intent of the grant.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, anyone else have?
I was, I'm agreeing with you. I could sense something was off, but I couldn't get it into words,
Putting it that I think at places that they were talking about in certain populations, I think is really great, but it seemed a little loose. It didn't seem like there was actually anything to keep the artist on track to make sure that that was being accomplished. And it seemed to put in my mind a little bit of doubt that was actually going to be accomplished.
That I got the same impression.
Oh. Okay, I read this very differently, and I'll be curious. So these are subjective things, right? There isn't a right or wrong answer. But I thought that, this artist was saying that this album will allow them to be seen as a solo artist and to go from being a supporting musician to a leader. So it had, it was about professional and artistic growth. And it's accordion music, an album of original songs, and his original interpretations. So that, I assume, if it's his original interpretations, that's what's distinctive. It's not, they haven't been done. What I did, I've never seen somebody do the what, the who, the when, the where before. And I thought he was trying to be efficient. I don't know that it works. I like things that are more of a story. But what I did think was a bit odd to me was that where he talks about at the end, this whole list of all of these very famous, Zydeco and Cajun and Creole musicians, that seemed to me that should have been in his artist bio, right? Where he's telling us his credentials, like, well, why are you the person to do that? I would have put that in the bio. Like, his bio isn't, I think he thought his artist bio was like a literal, like, I was born on the, and then I went to school, and like, his artist bio is giving us his credentials. It's not about how he became aware of the accordion. That seems to me, this seemed to me more of like an artist statement, like, where are your influences and how did you come to be doing this and why are you the person to do this? So I thought the artist bio should have had like, I've been playing music, I play multiple instruments, I've played with all of these distinguished bands, I'm well known in the community, and therefore I can pull together all of these musicians as I'm proposing in the project. So I thought this person was a little muddled in terms of how they organize the information. But I thought, for myself, I thought that it was a cogent project, like I could imagine the project. And then what I liked is that he talked about, I guess, trying to think in his artist statement about researching and reviving forgotten tunes. And so I thought that he had like a specific approach to music that was his. Was it? Right, and watching elder musicians, so that then said, right here in the second line, he said, inspiring people to dance, researching and reviving forgotten tunes, histories and stories, learning from others. And then he then said something about working with older, right, and watching elder musicians. He said, as someone who was never formally trained as a musician, but like many folks learned through listening, trial and error, and watching elder musicians, I appreciate the opportunity to share tips and techniques with students that allow them to experience success even more efficiently. So I guess I felt he had a connection, that he was reviving traditional forgotten tunes, and that seemed to me something that, you could bring to a senior center, but he didn't make that explicit, like why a senior center. I agree with that, but I thought it was a very thoughtful, I felt his personality, I felt his passion, I had a sense of what specifically he cared about, and that its purpose was to allow him to have the spotlight, to become recognized as a frontman rather than just as a sideman. But Anna, what was I don't know if this was funded or not, but what was your reaction?
Yeah, so this one wasn't funded. I think that he does hit all the points that we do ask for in in the application. Like, it absolutely does. I think though when it gets pitted against well-written applications like the previous one, which also didn't get funded, it just doesn't look like it's just not as polished. But that is actually something that we're trying to because there's more to like submitting grants in a like really polished way than like when you can see a group project, like somebody who's obviously extremely experienced, their forte might be. So we are trying to like reframe the way that panelists see things. But yeah, he does hit on all of these things. I do want to say that this person has applied for grants in the past as well and not been successful. And I think one of his downfalls is that he doesn't come to us with feedback. And so we can't feed any of this back, number one, and number two, we can't like sit with him and make sure that his, that there's areas for improvement, and I'm sure that he would actually be able to more accurately get across what he's trying to do. I do want to say though that this is like his pay it forward is like really cute, but it doesn't feel very well thought out. It feels like an afterthought, basically. And I do definitely think that was something that was brought up. It's just like, well, I'm gonna go play with these old folks, but like, maybe if we don't want the outreach portion to be an afterthought, we want it to be a fully integrated part of the project. And maybe if he was to say, I have, elder accordion players that I've looked up to in this hospice that I wanna go specifically sit with them and do these things. It might have been a stronger application, but as I said, like overall, hitting all the points, but like when you line it up against, you know, other applicants, it's hard to like, yeah. So the moral of this story is come to us with feedback, let us help you with, you know, the next time that you want to apply. The previous one, I don't think there is anything that I could have done for that person because I think it was actually a very good application. But it was just a weird place being in Acadiana and have some strategies for people who don't want to do Acadiana specific pieces on how to like communicate that to the panelists as well. So I'm happy to share those and with you if that's, you know, not your area.
Yeah, those are fair criticisms. So any final thoughts about this one? Okay, let's go on.
Okay. So this one's got a 2-page project description. Good. Get a thumbs up from Raven and Julian when you're both done.
Thumbs up.
Oh, you're all good. You're yeah. Julian, Raven, good.
Almost. Okay. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Julian. Raven, I think once you're done, just give us a. Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm done.
Okay. Last bit, the artist statement. Thanks, Julian.
All good.
So reaction,
Yeah. Thoughts?
and
Um,
your funders, would you fund this? If you were on the panel, would you give it, how would you rate this?
I would not. Um, I feel like, for someone who's declaring themselves a writer, it's not very well written. Yes, first. And one of his statements, or his or their statements, is about wanting to do a camp where they would teach others to write and review music venues and things. And I don't have confidence based on their descriptions that they have the skills to do this.
Yeah, great points.
I would like to add to that there is a lack in like explaining, being specific on like what they mean by like cultural boom. I would really love to know what they mean by that, what that looks like, and how he would like communicate that to if I was to be on a panel or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that big term is thrown out there without any kind of explanation or way to substantiate that claim or what it means. Yep. Other thoughts? Would anyone fund it? Anyone want to disagree and say they think we're missing things?
I mean, I like the concept of it. I would wanna know more about what exactly is gonna be the content.
My impression was that they wanted like money so they could buy tickets to events to write reviews. And that they would get a social media hire. I wasn't clear about that. That would sort of reimburse those expenses. It just was fuzzy.
That's a great word. Yeah. Anyone else?
Great energy. Again, I like what it is that they're really trying to talk about. Those, it could be a little bit more specific, I think, in what the deliverables are going to be on the end, but that's again, speaking as a designer, you has to deal with that all the time. But I think that there are some things to really work with on the grant that could really be positives, and a lot of it is probably just really heavy-handed editing.
I can give some insight into this one if we're ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this person is well, Julian, did you have some comments? Is that why you popped on? Or...
Yeah.
But why don't you have make the comments first, yeah?
Oh, I would just say, I appreciate what other people said, but I think that there are some ideas about this that are good, that even though it doesn't fit, I guess, mainstream academic packaging, I guess, in terms of the writing, the fact that it sounds like it's a young person who has been self-motivated to contribute to the community by offering information and commentary about local cultural events, and wants to share that skill with other young people to support the artists community among the 18 to 35-year-old age range. I agree, cultural boom kind of is a nebulous term, but I feel like I know what this person is saying, just to encourage younger people to be entrepreneurial about being artists and supporting artists through things like this, having publications and using social media. So anyway, I thought that there were some positive things in this.
I really love that you saw all of that in there, because I think you like really nail on the head with a lot of stuff. It is a young person who's trying to do that, and it's a zine. So it's not like a traditional publication, it's handmade and photocopied, and I think that the way that they pull it together is very much their personality in this as well. And they pull this thing together, it's not as regular as they or I would like it to be, because I love to see what they produce. But yeah, like it's not a great application, but there's a lot of personality in there, and I think it's a good project. It could absolutely use a bit of refining. But like I think like if we come into it knowing that they're like a little bit younger and that it's one of their first well, this was their first attempt at writing a grant, we definitely look at it differently. I love that Julian really pointed out that like that they're entrepreneurial and they're already producing, and like from that we can already establish that they would absolutely pull the project off. We don't have any doubt that would happen.
Great question.
Yeah.
So in that, how much personality would you interject into the grant? I guess would be the next question.
I think that's a really good question. I mean, I love personality. Like it really, I don't know, it really gives us the sense of what might come out of it. I don't really know how to describe.
I guess my feeling is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was looking to you to hope that you could.
Okay, yeah, I guess, the artist statement is where they're saying, who are you? What are your, what is your source of inspiration? Like, why are you doing this project? So that to me is where you give them more of a sense of who you are as an artist and what makes you tick. What I felt with this was that the project description talks about a zine, but it doesn't talk about the content of the zine. Like it talks about its marketing, and it talks about all kinds of things about using Facebook and this and that, but at no point did I get a sense of, other than they'd go to concerts and write reviews, what, they didn't give me enough of a sense of what the project itself was going to be. And they use the word frequently about, they were going to make about 15 this, and they were going to make about 6 issues. And having that kind of vagueness in a grant proposal undermines, because you're going to assign, if you get the award, right, there are going to be deliverables. And the deliverables are going to be that you're committing, you've said in the grant, you're going to do, like in the photography one we looked at, right? It was between 12 and 15 prints. So it was giving you a range. It wasn't saying we're going to do, 12.4 prints. It said between 12 and 15, but it gave you a range that was a reasonable range, right? So that if you then got the grant, the expectation would be that you'd be producing roughly that number. And anything that introduces uncertainty is going to make a potential funder feel like, do you have a precise game plan here? And, part of what we're doing with grant writing is we're often projecting a more confident tone. And one of the things we talked about, I think the first week, was that things do change, because with art, there are things we're anticipating when we put in our grant, and we're writing based on the information we have now. But if you're proposing a specific project, it really needs to sound like you've really thought it through, and that you've got something, very specific you're trying to do. And I guess I was just surprised in this artist's project description. It felt to me all over the map. There was a zine. I didn't really understand the content, and that wasn't the focus. And then there's this camp, and it was like, I really was confused, and maybe other people were more clear about what the project was. And then in their bio, I mean, they must have been very young, because the credentials they're talking about, first, it was a lot of negatives, right? It was that, unfortunately, I didn't bond over literature, right? You're saying you're with your peers. So you're telling us the negatives rather than like, what are your strengths? And their strength was that they won a prize in 8th grade. And in high school, they were on a debate and speech team. Like the credentials here didn't really add up, to my mind, to a lot to feel like this person is a writer. It was more these personal things. Okay, at the end, they say they've written for this 008 magazine and creating their own publication, but I didn't have a sense of what its reach was, who saw it. And it just, being on these radio shows, I didn't quite know, and maybe they're local shows that you guys know and are like, oh, these are shows that interview writers. I didn't know what the Freetown Boom Boom room was, but maybe that's a writer's room. But it felt to me like this person.
Like. Bar, a punk bar.
A punk bar. Okay, so so that's not a great credential for me for a writer, and they're talking about a zine that's a lot about music, but I didn't think they had established here very successfully their credentials for writing, unless they're maybe just graduated high school. I don't know. But
can I ask a question, Tracy? Like, if you were to see this application, and then you and then they provided you with an issue of the zine, and do you think that would and it was like, and you really liked it, do you think that would give you a different opinion of the way that they set up the project description?
That's a really good question. You know, since I work in film, you always have to have a work sample, right? You have to show the work in progress. And what's interesting is that there's no law that says the panel has to start with the written text. They could watch the samples first. I know a lot of people who, like, if it's not a strong sample, they don't really care what the text says. So that's a really good point. But usually, I think this was something we touched on in the first workshop, right? You're going to have more applications than you have funding for. And, you know, let's say you're starting with 100 applications, but you only have funding for 10. You know, you're going to constantly be whittling down till you get to the final. Let's say you've got the final 15. And but you only have money for 10. You're now going to be looking for reasons not to fund. And so if there are 10 applications where the application really presents a compelling description and proposal, and then the work sample is proof of concept and they're both equally strong, and then there's this one where you like the zine, but the application is a bit all over the map or a bit vague, you're now looking for reasons not to fund. So I think what's going to happen is that person may have gotten to the final round, but I think then when that's when I'm always thinking strategically. Like, I feel like I can get down to that, you know, the survivor round before, you know, it's that last where they're really making the decisions and what's going to tip the scale between me and someone else. And so that's why I really am always trying to think, how can I make them see what I have in mind? And, you know, with the photography project, right, I had read that line that the photographer had written about the neon line what was it? A neon line piercing, right? A detail like a neon line piercing the sky. It was like, it gave me something that I could imagine what they had in mind. It made something that was abstract and theoretical more real. You know, if you remember in the presentation of the first workshop, I used the metaphor of a blueprint, right? It's what you're presenting on paper is a stand-in for a blueprint. And the more you can say, like, you know, if you were an architect, rather than say, oh, it's going to have doors, it's going to have windows, there'll be bedrooms, you know, there'll be, you know, a kitchen. The more you can say, you know, the kitchen is going to have a beautiful original antique stove, and there'll be spigots over the stove, so you don't have to carry the pot to the sink. And, you know, anything that you can use that gives detail, that makes it sound like something that you've really given thought to, and that somebody then, right, I think I use the other word I often use is you're a conjurer, and you want to conjure for somebody who's reading it, something that they can imagine existing. So the more you use your artist's skills to put details on it and to make it sound like a cohesive project, and then provide the proof of concept in the sample or the images that you provide to accompany the text, you know, the stronger the application. Does that, I don't know if I just went off on a tangent, Anna.
Well, good. No, I think, I mean, that's a really good point. I think I just have a little soft spot.
Yeah. I have read this scene, and it is something I care a lot about, especially because the genre of music is like focused a lot on metal bands, and I think that there's a really strong community for that in Lafayette that gets not nearly as much attention as it should, because it's not the quintessential Cajun, et cetera. And this is a very spirited young person who is trying to do something, and I commend that.
Yeah. Yeah,
But see, now that's a really great point. Like that, if I were writing the grant for this project, right, I might say that, you know, here we are in a community that is world renowned for the Cajun and Zydeco music. And yet there is a whole community of metal lovers, you know, that are underserved.
Yeah.
And this is a magazine or a zine that's going to speak to them. And, you know, you're making a case for something. So I think that's a really, like, I think that's a great argument. Like, this is a community that's been overlooked.
yeah, that's definitely the argument that I would use for anything that is not like Louisiana, Acadiana, Cajun Creole specific, is to make the argument that, you know, there is a subculture of it here, but it's just overlooked a lot. So please, like, keep that in mind when you're writing your applications.
So we're down to our last essentially 12 minutes. Why don't we talk about people's particular projects and if there are particular things you're struggling with? Unless Anna, you have something else, if you want to go through those other two applications, or what do you think?
I mean, I have Sydney's draft project description. I mean, we could maybe spend a few minutes on that and then or maybe it is better used to ask questions specifically about certain areas. I don't know, how do we feel?
No, I'm realizing, I'm taking notes because I'm realizing I really need to separate the bio and the artist statement. That I've got lots of notes I'd like to do.
That's what my question,
merge them. Yeah.
that's my question would have been too, is that like, how do you really make an artist statement is that is distinct from the bio, you know, how do you separate the art and the artist in an effective way?
Mhm.
And in a way that you know, is concrete, and is there an example of anybody, you know, have experience doing that or seen one that they think would really kind of nail it?
Yeah, I just sort of took my resume and turned it into paragraph form. You know, just kind of listing credentials. Here's where I got my degrees, here's
And
the,
that's your bio, or
and that's the bio.
I do want to say that there's a blog post that's about to come out on ACA's website that will discuss the differences and give you tips on how to do it. But I'm sure Tracie has some input for this as well. Just remind me, in your thing, did you put a
I did not put it in there. Oh, you know, I've got it right here.
Yeah.
I was like, which things are artist statements? And that was highlighted in the ink.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, yeah, yeah.
So
So
I would say that the bio is your credentials. Like, why do we have confidence that you have the ability to pull off this work? And this is like saying, you know, my work has been seen here, and I've, you know, here are quotes from newspaper articles or, you know, magazines or reviews of my work that are giving you the funder the confidence that I am an actual artist. I have have a body of work that's been seen. Now, maybe there are first-time artists amongst us who are applying, and know that I think, you know, there's a real concern that as a first-time artist, it is harder to get a grant. Sure, because you're asking somebody to take a risk. You don't necessarily have a track record. But for that reason, what I often do, which I think we touched on perhaps in the first workshop, though maybe we didn't have time, is that if I'm a first-time artist, what I do is I get a letter of interest from a gallery, or for example, when I did my first film, Spike Lee's editor, Sam Pollard, who was very well known, he's now like a hugely successful filmmaker in his own right, he agreed to be the editor for my film. So nobody had heard of me, but the fact that I had this very well-respected artist on my team, this editor, famous editor, legitimated me, right? It legitimized me because the fact that he was willing to work with me said that he saw something. So that I think you play to your strengths. And if you are a first-time artist, you want to show you take initiative. So you get a letter of interest from a potential gallery, or, if you're doing a theater piece, from a potential theater, that they don't have to say that they're committing to do your work, but to say that they're excited about your work and that they're following it and they would love to, consider it for their venue or for their gallery, because that shows that you take initiative. And so I would then put, even though I am starting off my artistic career already, Gallery X has expressed interest, and then I'd put a quote from the letter, or I'd include the letter if I could. But so the bio is really, as you saw, they're written in the third person. They're not written in the first person, and they are really your credentials. You're putting your best foot forward, saying why you have the background to do this. An artist statement, on the other hand, is really giving me a sense of who you are as an artist and what your intentions are. So for anyone who was here in week 1, I showed this beautiful photo by the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe. And then we read the little cards that the gallery, actually in this case, it was the Guggenheim Museum, had put up next to the photo. And so it explained that Mapplethorpe, right, for anybody who remembers, it was an image of a man in a very posed position that was just it looked like a frozen sculpture. And in the text, that's exactly what was explained, that Mapplethorpe was very interested in Greek and Roman classical statuary, but that he felt that photography could take a snapshot, like it could make a sculpture instantly, right? It wasn't all the time. And so that he looked to, that was why he chose photography. So now I'm seeing this image, and now I have an understanding that he was influenced by sculpture, and that he saw photography as a quick way to make something that was sculptural. And then it went on to explain that he was also, as a gay man, influenced by homoerotic art, Greek and Roman statuary, and that he was looking to that kind of imagery, and the photo then had much more meaning to me, because I had a sense of who he was and what it was that drove his art. Like I really had a sense between looking at his imagery and reading this, what I would consider an artist statement. What made him, why was he a photographer? Well, now I understand that it's his interest in sculpture, and this is a quick way. And why this pose? Because he looked to traditional Greek and Roman homoerotic statuary, and these were the kinds of images that meant something to him. And this photo then reflected that. So it's like it gave me a much bigger view of the artist that was beyond what I saw just in the art itself. So it's like your influences, but not just listing them in isolation, it's connecting them to the work you do. I'm trying to think from the artist.
Visually conceptualize
Yeah.
the words you're, and also elements, sort of painting a thorough picture.
Yeah, and I liked what you had said. I think it was in that very first workshop, Tracie, where you talked about the macro view and the micro view. So in my project description, I worked on that. I divided mine up, and
Was that helpful?
yes, I found that very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm
And then
so
I kind
glad.
of melded Rachel Netterville's thing, and I slipped in a little biographical stuff within that, you know.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would add about an artist statement is also it's an opportunity, unless, like I know on film application, I don't remember seeing this in the Art Spark. So Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you submit the sample, do you have a description of the sample or do you just submit it?
Yeah, I think there should be, depends on how you're submitting it, but yes, you should be submitting a
description.
of it as well.
So
Yeah.
that's also an opportunity to talk about how this work is either continuing the work that you've done traditionally, right? It's like the next step in your creative evolution, or that you've been working, let's say in figurative work, and now you really would like to flex your creative muscles and try something that's abstract, right? So that it's giving me information to understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to do. Like I liked one of the descriptions we read, somebody described their work as experimental, and you then want to create that my work has historically been very figurative, and now I'm wanting to do something that's experimental, or I'm very influenced by experimental work, and now this is sort of the culmination of my career. I'm now stepping out onto a larger platform with this work. So we're just about out of time. So are there any like final pressing questions, or do you feel like you now have a way forward? Also knowing that Anna will work with you, give feedback, if I'm correct, on drafts before the deadline, which is.
I see Julian has popped up. Maybe she has a question.
Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciated what Tracie was sharing there at the end about, tips on representing ourselves and our projects in creative ways and effective ways. So I just appreciate being a part of this group, and I apologize for popping in at the end, but thank you to everybody.
We're happy to have you, Julian. So thanks for joining us.
So please, keep in touch either by Basecamp, or you have my email address. I'm gonna have a lot of sessions leading up to the submission deadline. So come along if you have questions, or just call me, or you have a link to my calendar, make it to my I'm really happy to continue talking about any questions you might have along the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, please take advantage of that. And thank you so much, Tracie, for the last 3 weeks. Really appreciate your time, and I hope you make it to your birthday on time.
Thank you so much. And Anna, thanks to you for organizing this, for all of your input, for, working with me week to week and trying to calibrate this. And, to everybody who came out, I know it's already winter, and the inertia factor of staying home on a cold night is big. I can relate to that. But, I wish you all full funding, and hope that next time we meet virtually or in person, you will all have received funding for your projects, and hope our paths continue to cross. So
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
And full funding to you too.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, I really appreciate that. I'm going to be spending the weekend working on a grant application, so I'll be thinking of all of you while I'm doing that. So bye for now.
Good night. Bye, Julian. Bye, Raven.
Bye.